Hi everybody, today I'll show you how to create an helpdesk system using a low-code, no-code platform, DaDaBIK. I will do everything from scratch. I don't use templates or anything like that, and I'll do it in about 1 hour and a half without coding. As usual, the video is divided into 3 main parts. First, I show you the resulting application, what you will get. Second, I'll introduce DaDaBIK, the platform we use. Third and main part, I'll show you step by step how I actually created this helpdesk system. My name is Eugenio Tacchini, I'm the founder of DaDaBIK, and I hope you will enjoy this video. As you know, I'm creating a series of tutorials like this one. This is the 3rd one, and each time I create a different application. Let me know in the comments which application you would like me to build using DaDaBIK. Or more in general, if you are interested in the no-code, low-code world, click on subscribe and then hit the notification bell. Here is the helpdesk application I will create. It's a web application that you can use to manage the support requests created by the employees of a company or any organization. Each employee can create a ticket adding details and files. I'm thinking about an IT help desk. So for example, I work in this company, I'm an employee, my computer doesn't work as expected. I open a support ticket explaining what is happening and I attach a screenshot. In this app we will have 4 user groups: admin, managers, staff, and employees. Admins are the developers of the application, so they can modify the application itself and do everything they want. Then we have employees, they can create support tickets. We have managers, they assign the tickets to the staff members. And finally, the staff members, they actually work to solve the problems. They can add comments to the tickets and start a conversation with the employees. We'll set some rules for the groups. Managers can see all the requests. Each employee can see only the requests he or she created. Each staff member can see only the requests assigned to him or her. You have a dashboard where the managers can see some important information: the number of requests received in each week, the number of requests assigned to each staff member, and the number of requests grouped by status: unassigned, assigned, and solved. We have the classic CRUD forms to create, read, update, delete data. Forms are responsive, so you can use this application also from your phone. Inline edit on the grid is also available. We have 22 languages available. It's an app you can host wherever you want, in your company server, in the cloud, even on your local laptop. You're not forced to store it in our cloud. It's a secure, multi-user, enterprise-ready application. You can import and synchronize data from Excel, CSV, and ODS files. You can customize the layout. For example, you can change the logo, change the color theme, add your own CSS, and more. You have an export to PDF feature. Maybe you want to export in PDF all the support requests received in a particular month, for example. And you can also write your own PDF template in case the default one doesn't fit your needs. If you need to integrate this app with other applications, no problem. You have many options. You have HTTP API that other applications can use to communicate with this one. You can export your data in CSV. You can use LDAP authentication if you need. You can even share the authentication with WordPress. we have revisions, audit features. For each record, in this case for each request, I can see who inserted, modified, or deleted the record and when. And finally, you can embed your app or part of it in a WordPress page. So you will get a working, enterprise-ready no-code application. It's not a prototype, it's something you can really use in production right after the creation. Before starting the actual work, let me introduce the platform we are using. DaDaBIK is a low-code, no-code platform. It's available since 2001, more than 20 years. It is constantly updated and has thousands of users from all over the world. Customers include individuals, small business, big companies, and many universities as well. The typical use is the creation of internal tools by both coders and non-coders, but it is not limited to internal tools. DaDaBIK comes in 3 editions: Pro, Enterprise, and Platinum. I will use the Platinum edition in this video, but all the features we will use are available in DaDaBIK Enterprise as well, and many of them also in DaDaBIK Pro. As usual, I want to point out that DaDaBIK is a general-purpose platform. This Helpdesk application is just one example of application you can create with DaDaBIK. In the previous tutorial, I created an inventory management system, for example. You can build a library management application, an ERP, or even a simple contact form. As I always say, anything that is based on data and uses forms, reports, and charts is a very good candidate for DaDaBIK. You can get DaDaBIK from dadabik.com/download. Okay, let's install DaDaBIK now. We start with the zip file you download when you buy DaDaBIK. I take the zip file, I'll unzip it, and I get 2 folders, one containing the documentation, the other one containing the actual program. I copy everything I have here in the program files folder and I paste it here in a folder under my web root that I created and I called Dada Helpdesk. Before running the installation script, I have to set some configuration parameters in a file that you find in the include folder that is called config.custom.php. This is my configuration file that at the moment is empty, and here in the DaDaBIK documentation you can see an example of configuration file containing only the bare minimum. So I copy from here and I paste here. Let me delete everything here and then we will edit each parameter with the correct value. So serial number, first serial number, of course here you need to put your serial number. Then DBMS type, DaDaBIK supports MySQL, PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL Server or SQLite. In our case we will use MySQL. Host, here the MySQL server is on my local computer, the one I'm using to install DaDaBIK, so I can refer to my local host as 127.0.0.1. This is the IP address of my local computer. Sometimes you can just write localhost here. Database name, DB name. So DaDaBIK needs a database to work, a place where it stores the data. Maybe you already have a database with some tables, then you put the name here, the user and password needed to access it, and DaDaBIK will create an application on the top of that database. However, in our case, we want to start from scratch, so with an empty database. All right. the name of my database will be dada-helpdesk, and also the username will be the same, and this is the password. Till DaDaBIK 11.6, you needed to create this empty database using any admin tool like phpMyAdmin, the MySQL console, or MySQL Workbench, for example. Starting from version 11.7, if you are using MySQL, and if this database doesn't exist yet, DaDaBIK will try to create it using this account. If you are installing DaDaBIK on the cloud, your hosting provider will give you the username and the password of the user, of the MySQL user you have to use to access to your databases. And maybe you have an admin panel where you can add new users. Then we have two security parameters. In the documentation, you will find all the information about them. Since this is just a local test, I will add just some, random letters. Finally, my time zone, that is Europe, Rome. Okay. We can now install DaDaBIK. Let's go back here. Since all the files were in the folder dada-helpdesk, we can reach DaDaBIK from localhost /dada-helpdesk, and we want to run install.php. Okay. We will build a new blank application. Let's wait a few seconds. All right. The application is created. Okay, let's see our application. So by default, you will have in a new application 2 users and 2 user groups. One of the 2 users is an admin user. The username is root and the password is Letizia. So we log in as root, and this is our blank new empty application. It's empty because our database was empty. The only thing we see is default homepage, and here under the admin folder, 2 users, these 2 users, and 2 groups, admin and default group. Before continuing, I would like to add a few more parameters to our configuration file. So just to clarify, this is the minimum set of parameters you need to have in your configuration file when you install DaDaBIK. But then you have many other general configuration parameters that you can add to your config custom file. And for the moment, I will add these 3. With the first one, I set my favorite graphic theme, blue-gray. A graphic theme is basically a combination of colors for the layout of your application. And with these 2 parameters, we allow the creation of tables and views directly from DaDaBIK without using any external tool. Okay, save. Let's go back here, and okay, the color theme has changed. This is the application we are building, and I will open in another tab of my browser this link, edit this app. So here, so-called admin area instead is the place where we develop the application. So I can access this admin area only if I am an admin. And since we are the user root, we belong to the admin groups. Okay, so here this is the application that final users will see. Here the admin area where we configure, develop our application. So the very first thing we have to do is the creation of at least one table. Okay, we need to store. We created, DaDaBIK created automatically an empty database. Inside this database, we need one or more tables. And for our Helpdesk application, we need at least one table, a table that I would call requests. This table will contain the requests we will receive from the employees. So when an employee has a problem, he or she creates a request, so the manager can see the request and can assign the request to one of the people belonging to the staff group. Okay. Before creating the table, I want to set here install and enable tables on creation. Yes, this makes things easier. And then again, tables and views, create a new table with name requests. When you create a table in DaDaBIK, DaDaBIK by default adds a first field called ID. It's an integer field. It's the primary key of the table and is auto increment. What is a primary key? A primary key is a field or a set of fields that uniquely identifies each single record in your table. Okay, so on a primary key, you cannot have duplications. So in our case, we cannot have two requests having the same ID. This allows us to, identify uniquely each request. The fact that the field is also auto increment makes things easier, because every time you create a new request, DaDaBIK, actually MySQL automatically assigns a new ID. ID 1, then ID 2, ID 3, ID 4, ID 5, auto increment. Okay? Now, let's add the other fields. I would say we need the title for our request, something like my computer is broken. Okay? Field type, I would say it's a short text. Short text in the DaDaBIK vocabulary is an alphanumeric field having maximum 256 characters. Nullable, no, means that this field cannot be null, cannot have a request without the title. Then description, like a longer text with some details. So in that case, long text, nullable, no again. And then I would say status, short text. I imagine that here you can have three different values. When you create a new request, the status is unassigned. Then the manager assigns the request to someone, and then the status changes to assigned. And when finally the ticket is solved, the status will be solved. Okay, so short text, nullable, again, no. Then I would like to add a priority field. again maybe 3 different values that then we will specify something like low, medium, and high, priority, attachment, maybe the employee wants to add an attachment, a file to the ticket, to the request. In this case, nullable is yes, because you can create a request even without attachment. And why it's short text? Because for file uploading, to manage file uploading, DaDaBIK saves the file in the file system and the name of the file in the database. So the field type for this field will be short text because it will contain just the name of the file and not the file itself. Then date time, the type is date and time, and here we will register the date and time when the request has been generated. Nullable, no, it's fine. Then employee, short text, this contains the username of the employee who created the request. And finally, ID staff assigned. Let me explain something about that. Nullable, yes. So basically here we want to register the person, the user, who is going to take care of this request. Why we want to store the ID here, so an integer number? You will understand better this later, but let me just tell you that we will have a table containing all the people working in this help desk, so our staff, each one having an ID, and in the requests table we use the ID to refer to the person who is going to take care of the request itself. Okay, the ID is enough because using the ID then we can get all the information related to that person if we need further information. Okay, and nullable, yes, because when you create the request is still unassigned. All right, this field will be null. Then at some point, as we said, the manager assign the request to a member of the staff. Okay, so save. And guys, this is a standard MySQL table, so you can add all the fields you want. For example, I don't know, maybe you want to register the operating system of the employee, because according to that the procedure maybe is different. The operating system or a version of the software they are using or the device they are using. You can add as many information as you want. Let me show you that this is just a standard MySQL table. I will open phpMyAdmin here. On the database Dada Helpdesk, the one we are using, as you can see, DaDaBIK created some internal tables, these ones having a name starting with DaDaBIK, and also the requests table. Now it's empty, but the structure is exactly the one we have designed in DaDaBIK. Okay, so if I create a table in DaDaBIK, I can see it here. If I create a table in phpMyAdmin or using any other tool, I can see the table in DaDaBIK. So maximum flexibility. With DaDaBIK, you will never experience data vendor lock-in, because this is a standard, again, a standard MySQL or PostgreSQL, SQL Server, SQLite table. So you can query the table also from outside DaDaBIK. You can export the data. You can do basically everything you need. But let's go back to our application. I think we need a second table that I would call request comments. So the request comments table will contain the comments related to each request. So for example, let's say that I'm an employee, my printer is broken, so I open a ticket saying, yeah, my printer is broken. A new record is registered in the requests table. Then the request is assigned to someone in the staff group, and that staff member replies me saying, okay, can you give me more details? Do you see an error message or something like that? And then again, I will reply to the staff member, adding some details, and the conversation can continue. Since we want to keep the design of our database pretty much normalized, we want to store those comments in a different table. We have a one-to-many relationship technically between requests and request comments. For each request, you can have many comments. Let's create the table because probably everything will be more clear. So request comments. Again, by default, we have an ID, and then comment. So the comment itself, maybe long text, and then even here for each comment, maybe we have an attachment. Again, short text, nullable yes. Then we have ID request. So the ID of the request this comment is related to, and this is integer. So this field ID request refers to the field ID we have in requests. If you are familiar with database design and relational databases in general, you probably can think about this as a foreign key. And then we have date, time, and user. User is the username of the person who created this comment. It can be an employee or a staff member. Save changes. Let me go back to the application now and let's reload everything. It is still empty. Why? Because by default, when we create tables in DaDaBIK, all the permissions are set to no. That's why you don't see anything here. You can change this default behavior, but I left the default behavior, the default configuration on purpose because I wanted to explain in details how permissions work. So let's go back here and permissions. So here, for each user group, we can set the permissions for each table, view, or custom page. But for the moment, let's focus on tables. We have two tables at the moment, requests and request comments. Let's try with requests and admin. Okay, we have table level permissions and field level permissions. Table level permissions. Here you have the typical CRUD permissions. So we can decide if the users belonging to the admin groups can CRUD, create, read, update, we call it edit, and delete records in this table. Okay, so we can say yes, 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 and yes. As you can see, we have also a my option, but we will explain this later if we need it. And we also have two additional permissions, details and CSV. So here, yes, I'm saying that these users can see the details page of a record. This needs an additional permission respect to the read one, and CSV, if those users can export the records in CSV, and save. Then field level permissions. So here, for each field belonging to this table, we can set, granular permissions, saying, for example, that I don't know, these users can edit the table, but only a few fields. So in that case, we will set edit permission table level to yes, but we will set yes only for a few fields here. Okay, for example, only for title and description. For the moment, let's set everything to yes. So we can click here, set yes for all fields permissions, and everything will be set as yes. The only thing I want to change is in the ID. For the ID field, I don't want the ID field in the insert form, because it's an auto increment field, and MySQL will assign a value for the ID. We don't want the user to set the value, and probably we don't want the user to change the ID. So edit no, or yes but disabled. This is probably better because you can see in the edit form the ID, but you cannot change it. Let's do the same for the other table. Yes, set yes for everything here. Create no, edit yes but disabled. Okay, let's go back to our application and reload. All right, now we have the two tables here. Well, we have a link in the left menu for each of the table, and we can already create a request if we want. Basically, DaDaBIK has created a basic CRUD application based on two tables for the moment. So let's insert a request even if the forms are not configured yet. So create new. What did I mean when I said the forms are not configured yet? For example, let's see the field attachment. This is just a standard text box, but I need to be able to upload a file from here. So I have to tell DaDaBIK that this should be a file field. Okay, but we will configure the forms later. Let me just add some random data here. Title, well, for title a text box is fine, so we won't do anything about that in terms of form configuration. So title, my printer is broken. Description, help me. So even for description it's fine. Status, we don't want the user, the final user, to fill this field unassigned. This should be automatically filled, so we will see later how to do it. Priority, let's say high. Again, this should be changed. We probably need a menu where the user can select the priority from a set of options. Attachment, we discussed that before. It's not required, so I'm not filling it. Date, time. This is another field that should be filled automatically. Employee. Again, this should be the username of the final user who is sending this request. And again, it should be automatically registered. But for the moment, I type it manually. And here, the ID of the staff person who got this request. It shouldn't be in the insert form, so we will remove it. Save. Even if the form needs to be improved, we could anyway register a new request. And as you can see from here, again, DaDaBIK has created a basic CRUD application. So we can create new record, we can search for records, and of course read. We can edit and update, our data. We can delete the records, and in addition to that, we can also do some other things like we can generate charts, pivot table. We can export to CSV. We can import from Excel. We can export our data to PDF. Coming back to the forms, as we said, DaDaBIK created forms that fit your database schema according to some rules. The field types you used for your tables, the field names. There are a set of rules that DaDaBIK uses to create this first basic CRUD application. Okay, but as we said, we can improve these forms using the form configurator. So now we will explore the form configurator. Okay, how does form configurator work? It's very easy. We choose the table or view here and the field of the form we want to configure. Let's start with requests, and as you can see, we have a form preview here. We can choose the user group and the form type, insert, edit, search, or details page. And here we have a set of parameters for each field that we can set. We don't have the time to go through all the parameters, but I will show you some of them. For sure, the most important ones are the label, the field type, and the content type. Okay, so let's forget the ID. Let's start with the title, and let me tell you something about these three parameters. So of course the label is what you see here in the form. So if I change the label here, the label in the form will be different, and I can have a different label for the results grid. So if I want something different here respect to the form, I can specify it here. Otherwise I can leave it empty. Then we said field type and content type. So we have a set of different field types we can use. We will explore probably most of them. Here, for example, for title, DaDaBIK selected a text field. This is a standard text box. Okay. What is the content type? With the content type, as the word says, we specify the content we have in the field. So sometimes the content is implicit. So for example, if you choose a date field type, well, the content will be a date. But for other fields, things are different. For example, for text fields, you can have a text box containing alphabetic, alphanumeric, numeric, URL, email, phone, many different content types. According to what you choose here, DaDaBIK will validate the content when the user insert the data. So if this is an email, for example, the content must be a valid email. Content type also has an impact on how DaDaBIK formats the content in the results grid and in the details page. So for example, if you choose URL here, instead of just displaying the URL will become a link. But in our case, for the title of the request, alphanumeric is fine. Okay, so save. Actually, we didn't change anything, so we didn't need to save. But anyway, description is also fine. Is a text area, so it's a bigger text box. Let me check something here. Max length is 100. Probably we want more. This is the number of characters the user can type here. Let's say 500. Okay, description. Status is a text box, but we said before that we would like to have a menu. So the options are unassigned, assigned, and solved, but we don't want to have, we don't need this field in the insert form. So when the request is registered by a user, the status by default should be unassigned, and this field shouldn't be here. So first we change the field type. This is a select single, and here we specify the options: unassigned, assigned, solved. By default, DaDaBIK uses the tilde character to separate the options. So now we have this menu. So that's one way to specify the options for a drop-down menu. The other way is to use a lookup field. So to get the options from another table. We will use that approach for another field. And let me specify the default value unassigned. Okay, so by default will be like that. And save. In addition to that, let's go back to the permissions. Request, sorry, the admin. Status create no. We said that we don't want the field in the form, in the insert form, sorry. Okay, if I reload my form configurator, as you can see, the field is not in the form. However, since we had a default value, when you insert, when the user, the final user, will insert a new request, for the status, the value will be unassigned. Okay, status, priority. And priority again is a select single field. This time the options will be low, medium, and high. Okay, and we need the field in the insert form, so we don't have to touch the permissions. And save. Attachment at the moment is a text field. We want a file field, and in particular a generic file field type is the one we are going to use, because maybe the user wants to upload not only screenshots or pictures in general, but also other files. So we are getting an error here. Why? Because for security reasons, in order to use uploads, we have to enable uploads in our configuration file. So let's open our config custom file and let's set enable uploads to 1. Now let me redo everything here with the attachment. All right, generic file. Okay, you don't see anything here, but it will work and we don't have the error anymore. Save, then date time. This is the date time when the support ticket has been registered. So instead of a standard date time, we will use the insert date time. When you use insert date time, basically DaDaBIK removes the field, automatically removes the field from the insert form. As you can see, the field is not here, and fill the field with the current date time. So you will have the data without the need of filling manually the field. And save. Employee. So here we want the username of the employee who registered this support request. At the moment is a text field, but again, this is not correct. We will use this special field called ID user. With ID user, DaDaBIK will fill, when a new record is inserted, will fill this field with the username of the current user. And save. We have to do something more for the ID user field, sorry, for the employee field. We have to set create in the permission no. We don't want to see the employee field in the insert form. The username of the current user will be automatically assigned as a value for the field. So create no, and we don't want to leave the user the permission to modify that value. So edit, yes, but disabled. Let's go back here. I don't remember if we saved this. So employee is not in the form anymore. How about the last field, the ID staff assigned? I want to leave it blank. I mean, I don't want to configure it for the moment, because this will be a lookup field. But before configuring it, I need to add a group to our list of groups. The staff group. So first we configure the groups, and then we will go back here. So for the moment, that's it. Request table. We have two tables. The other one is request comments. Again, ID it's fine, and there's nothing we have to change. Text numeric is fine, and anyway, as you probably remember, we remove the ID from the insert form, and we made it disabled in the edit form. So comment is a text area, and that's fine. Maybe even here we can increase the max length and save, comment, attachment, even here should be a generic file. Then ID request. Okay, here we have a text field, but this is not the correct field type. Here we need a lookup fields. Drop down menu where the options are the requests we have in the requests table. So first, let's change the label. DaDaBIK set as label ID request because that was the field name in the database, but for the final user we just want to see request and not ID request. So request, select single, and now instead of specifying the options here hard-coded, we select the lookup table name, that is request, the primary key of the lookup table name, that is ID, and the linked field. For example, title. Well, maybe title is enough. We can add more linked field. In a moment I will explain what a linked field is. Maybe employee. So let's see what happened here. As you can see, we have just one option. My printer is broken, Bob, so the title of the request and the person who registered that request. Of course, if we had more records in the request table, you will see those records as options here. But let me explain what is happening here with the linked fields. Basically, what you are registering in the database in the request comments table field ID request is the ID of the request. Okay. However, what the final user sees in the menu is the title of the request plus the employee who registered the request. Okay, that's a lookup field. And save. Date time, even for this one, is an insert date time. And save. And the user is an ID user field. And save. And again, permissions, we have to remove the user from the create form and edit form, yes, but disabled. Okay, so let's see how our application has changed. Request, create new. It's different, as you can see. Title and descriptions are the same. Priority, for priority now we have the menu we wanted. Attachment, we can upload a file. So it's a bit different. Okay. Request comment, maybe we can try to add a comment here, and we choose this request. Okay, form configuration is almost done. We still have to handle these ID stuff assigned, but as I said, before doing that, we have to go through the groups. So by default, DaDaBIK creates two groups, admin and default, and two users, root belonging to the admin group and Alfonso belonging to the default group. So as we said at the beginning of this video, we need, in addition to the admin group, these are the administrators, so the user that, for example, root, that can also configure the application. So, for example, setting the permission, configuring the forms, and so on and so forth. In addition to the admin group, we need 3 groups. The staff members, these are the people who are actually working on the requests, the managers, and the employees. So I will keep the admin group, and I will add the other ones. Well, since we don't need a default group, I can just change the name to staff. And then I will add the other 2 groups. Managers, employees. Users. So root is fine. We don't need Alfonso, so I'll delete it. Let's add a couple of users to the staff group. So create new. Let's say Tom at tom.com. Group staff. As you can see, each user has a main group the user belongs to, and other optional groups the user belongs to. But for this application, we only set one group for each user. So as a password, since it's just a local test, I will use Tom. And force password change, no. This is a security option. If it's set to no, the user doesn't need to change the password the next login. So save. And I will use Tom to create another user, Alice at alice.com, staff, password Alice. Okay, insert as new. Let's add a manager now. Bob at bob.com, manager. Okay. So we have one manager, Bob, and 2 staff members. And I, as root, as administrator, I registered these users. How about the employees? We can do the same, but we can also leave the employees the option to register by themselves. By default, users self-registration is disabled, so we have to enable it in our configuration file. So enable user self-registration equal to 1. And we have to do something more. Default group user self-registration equal to 2. What does it mean? Here we are telling DaDaBIK to which group self-registered users belong to. Let's go back here. So our groups are these ones. I wrote 2 and I made a mistake because it should be 4. Okay. If you registered by yourself, you will be assigned to the employees group. Let's try it. Okay, I log out here. As you can see, we have a register link now. Username, let's say Walter. Password Walter. walter@walter.com. Okay, submit and register new account. Okay, account created. You will receive a confirmation email containing an activation link. So it's a standard registration procedure. You'll get an email. You have to click to confirm the registration. Let's see the email. I'm using MailHog here. It's basically an email testing tool. It's installed in my system. So when I send an email from PHP, it's not really sent. It's delivered through MailHog so that I can see the message regardless of the recipient in this interface. So this is the message I sent before. Hello, someone has registered an account. To complete your registration, click on this link. Okay, our account has been activated and we can log in as Walter. Okay, now we are getting this error message because basically the employees group has no permission at all. That's why. So now we are going to set the permissions for the three groups we have created. Because we so far we worked only on the admin group, we will do the other groups now. Okay, first I need to log out and log in again as root. Otherwise I cannot set the permissions. So edit this app, permissions. Okay, now we have three groups. Of course we can select each group and set manually the permissions, but it's way faster if we copy the permissions from the admin group to the other groups, and then maybe we remove the permissions if we need. Okay, so copy permissions from admin to managers for all the tables and custom pages. If I leave this menu blank, the permissions are copied from this group to this group for all the objects. Copy permissions. Okay, now the managers have exactly the same permission administrators have on the two tables, requests and the request comments, but remember the managers cannot see the admin area, so they cannot edit the application. That's the huge difference. Okay, that is something that only the admin users can do. Let's do the same for staff. Let's copy everything. Let's copy all the permissions from admin to staff. Okay, so same thing. We will need to do something though for staff. We cannot do it here, but the difference between staff members and managers is the fact that as a staff member, I can only see the requests assigned to me, while managers can see everything. But this is something we will do using another DaDaBIK feature. So maybe one thing that we have to adjust is this one. Request, let me show you something. Managers. Okay, maybe it makes sense to remove the create permission for request for managers and staff, because only employees actually insert requests. right? So we can remove this for managers and staff. Okay, how about the employees? Let's do it again. Copy from admin to employees. Okay, here, however, there are many things we have to set. So first thing, employees don't need to export to CSV, so this is no. And for read, delete, edit, instead of yes, we set my. Why? Do you remember that ID user field in the request table? We said that in that field we have the username of the employee who created the support request, the ticket, right? Each employee should see only the requests they created. That's why we have my. An employee shouldn't see other people's requests. Okay, so each employee can read, delete, and modify only their requests. Save. Then on the field level, status edit disabled. The status is something that the staff members or the manager should handle, not the employee. The same for priority. I would say the priority is something that the employee can set when the employee creates the request, but then the field can be modified only by managers and staff members. And finally, staff assigned, again, disabled. The employee cannot change the staff member who is working on the request. And save. Then request comments. So this time we don't have to set my here. Why? Because the employee should be able to see also the comments from other people, in particular from staff members, right? So for each request you can have a set of comments and the employee can comment the request, but also staff members. So yes, in this case, yes. For delete, edit, I would say no, and CSV as well. Why? Since we are going to implement a notification system, so when I add a comment, if I'm an employee, when I add a comment, the staff member who is working on the request is notified. It's better to avoid edit and delete, because otherwise we have to create additional different notifications. So if my comment was wrong, or I realize that I need to add something, well, I will add another comment. Okay, and save. Maybe it's important to point out this. So here we have edit no, but as you can see, for many fields we have edit yes. However, if on the table level the edit permission is set to no, the edit yes on the single fields doesn't have any effect. Okay, so the whole table is not editable, even if you have some yes here on the field level permissions side. Okay, the permissions are set. Before trying to see the effect of these settings, let me add some fake data. So I will add some requests, so we have some data to work on. Okay, I added 1000 requests made by 2 employees, Walter and Monica. Monica is a second employee I added. I see here that we still have to configure this field. We see the ID here, but we want to see the username of the staff member. So let me do this first. Form configurator, request, ID staff assigned, and label. Maybe we can write something like assigned to. And this is not text, it should be select single. This is a lookup field, and we get the options from the table DaDaBIK users. The table DaDaBIK users contains all the users of our application, so we should filter those users, because we don't want all the users, but only the ones belonging to the staff members group. Lookup table name, primary key, ID user, linked fields, username. Okay, so here, as you can see, we have all the users, but again, we only want the users belonging to a particular group. Which one? Let me double check here. Staff is a group having ID 2. So here, where close, we can filter the records according to a condition. So something like ID group equals 2 should work. Tom Ellis, only the users belonging to the staff. Okay. All right, save. Let's go back here, and well, as you can see now, we have the name of the username of the staff member. So as I said, I added 1000 records, 1000 requests made by 2 employees and assigned to the staff members. Well, some of them are unassigned, some of them are assigned or solved with a staff member here in the assigned to field. We still have to do one additional thing. If you remember, we have to add a filter to the records each staff member can see. So if I log in as Tom, now I see Tom, for example, I see all the requests, but I should see only the requests assigned to me. To do that, we have to use the row level custom filter feature. Let me show you how to add this rule. We need to add some code, but it's very, very simple. Let me explain. This is the code we have to add to our custom functions.php file. Okay, so with this line, we are saying for the requests table, we want to define a custom filter. And this custom filter is defined by this function. This is just a name that I decided to use for this function, DaDaBIK custom filter requests. But you can use anything. The only rule is that it should start with DaDaBIK _. Okay, and this is the function. Okay, DaDaBIK custom filter request. Let's see the core of the function. So this function is executed every time we open the requests table. And basically what we want to do is adding this rule. If the current ID group is 2, so this is the ID group of the staff members, then add the filter. Otherwise, don't do anything. So these custom filter functions need to return the filter to add to the query that DaDaBIK automatically executes when you open a table in the application, when you want to see the records of a table in the application. Now let's go through all the lines, all the code lines. The first line is just for using two global variables that DaDaBIK provides for you to use in your code. The first one is current ID user, the second one current ID group. Current ID user contains the ID of the user currently logged in. Current ID group contains the ID group of the user currently logged in. Okay, so this just allows you to use these two variables in your code. You should never modify these global variables that DaDaBIK provides to you. You should just read them. So, and here, this is the core of the code, very simple. If the current ID group is equal to 2, so if the current user belongs to the staff group, then then the filter is this one. Otherwise, the filter is 1 equal to 1, which is, just a trick to say don't add any filter. Because basically every time you define a custom filter function, you need to return a filter. Okay, so if you don't want to filter your records, you return a filter 1 equal 1. That is always true, and that's fine. Okay, and here you are returning the filter you define here. Let's analyze this part instead. Here, you just said ID staff assigned equal to current ID user. So basically, what I'm saying is the value of the field ID staff assigned must be equal to my ID user. Okay? If it's equal to my ID user, then keep the record. Show me the record. Otherwise, don't show me the record. Okay? And that's it. So let's go back to the application. So now that everything is ready, I will show you how the application changes. Well, the data you see will change according to the user is logged in. So if I'm logged in as root, I can see all the requests, and I can also edit the application, right? Now let's log in with, so we start with the manager, that is Bob, and then we try staff, Alice, and then Walter. So Bob, Alice, Walter. Log out. Bob. Okay, Bob can still see all the requests because Bob is a manager, but as you can see, we cannot edit the application, and that's fine. Okay. Also, we cannot create a request because if you remember, we remove the create permission for a request for managers and staff members. Okay, next user, Alice. Alice. So Alice is a staff member, so she can only see the requests assigned to her. In fact, we don't see 1,000 requests, but only 300 32. So the request assigned to Alice. Okay. And again, of course, I cannot edit the application. All right. Log out, final. The last one is Walter. Walter is an employee. I can see 512 requests, and these are the requests I registered. Employee Walter, 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 regardless of the staff member the request is assigned to. So for example, this one is assigned to Tom, this also to Tom, this is unassigned, maybe we also have some other ones assigned to Alice, okay? And we have an additional limitation as employee. For comments, we can only create comments, we cannot edit or delete comments, while the other groups can do it. So now we have to do something about these comments, because we see the comments here, but actually we want to see the comments below each request. So for example, if I open this request, I want to see the comments, the list of the comments related to this request here. This is called the master detail view, and this is the next thing I will show you. Okay, master detail view. Let's log in as root first. I would change this name. Request comments was the name of the table, but it's well, an ugly name for the menu, for the application. So here from pages, request comments, we can call it just comments. Save changes, and that's just comments. Okay, then master detail, form configurator. So we have to go to the primary key of requests in form configurator, that is ID, and here we want to add as items table the request comments table. So items table name is request comments. Items table foreign key field name. What does it mean? If you're familiar with databases, probably you know the term foreign key, but actually this is not technically a foreign key. So it could be and it should be a foreign key, but not necessarily. So just think about this parameter as the field in the request comments table that tells us to which request the comment is related to. That's it. And the field is ID request, because for each request comment we have an ID request field that tells us the request the comment is related to, right? And it was this field, if you remember. Okay, this field. ID request, save. So now here we go. We can see the comments related to each request. This request has only one comment. Let's see if the next one... No, the next one doesn't have any comment. I think it was the 5th request. So yes, here we have 2 related comments. Okay, this was the master detail view. What else we can do? We can remove comments from here. So if we go to permissions, request comments, we can remove. Now we are root, so let's do it for the admin group, but you can do it for the other groups as well. I can set read no. If I set read no, I don't see anymore the comments item here in the menu, but I can still see the data inside the table. Why? Because that table, the request comments table, is part of a master detail view. Okay, and that's exactly what I wanted. All right, next topic is views. Let's say that very often managers need to see the unassigned requests. Of course, they can search for them. So here, status, unassigned, and here we go. Or assigned, and here we go. But let's say we want to simplify this operation and have two links here. So maybe we can have all requests here, and then assigned request and unassigned request. So with just one click, you can see all the requests, only the unassigned, only the assigned. To do that, we can use views. So in order to create a view, we should go here. What is a view? I will simplify a little bit, but the concept is think about that as a virtual table based on another table. Okay, again, I'm simplifying it a little bit, but I think that for this tutorial is enough. So for example, let's take the requests table. We want to create a view that consider only the unassigned requests. So we can create a new view with name unassigned request as, and here we need to write some SQL to define the view, but it's very easy. Let me write it down and then I'll explain it. Okay, here I'm saying select everything, all the columns from the table request, but not all the rows, but only the rows where status is unassigned. This is a view. After the creation, you can use a view in DaDaBIK as another table, as a standard table basically. Some views have some technical limitations, but I don't want to go into those details because in this case they do exactly what we want. So this view will always take the data from the original table requests. So every time there is a new request, an assigned request in the request table, you will see it in the view as well. Okay, we have to add the unique field name for this view. That will be the ID. The ID was the field name that identified each record in the request table, and we create the view. Let me copy also this code. Okay, now I will create the other view. So the assigned requests view. Again, ID. Very good. Now those views, for those views, we should set the permissions, right? Because right now they are just like, new tables. So without basically without any permissions, but we can easily copy the permissions from the table requests. So we copy the permission from the table request to the table or view assigned request, and also to the view unassigned request. Same thing for the form configurator. So the two views, for the two views, we should configure the fields as we did for requests. So for example, let's look at attachment is a text field, but it should be a generic file field. But again, instead of configure the fields manually, since, and this is the reason why we can do it here in form configurator, since assigned request has exactly the same field as request, we can copy the form settings. So from table request to table assigned request, and from table request to table unassigned requests. Very good. So let's see here. So our pages based on tables, we have comments and requests, but now we said we want to call it all requests. And pages based on views, assigned requests, and unassigned requests. Let's see our application. All right, now we have all requests, unassigned requests, and assigned requests. Why I see only 300? Oh, okay, because I was searching for assigned requests here. So remove search filter, all request is 1000. Unassigned 340, assigned 300. Okay, very good. Okay, let's talk about customizing the graphic layout of the application. There are many things you can do. First one is change the logo. This is the default DaDaBIK logo. You can set your own logo in your configuration file. So I created a logo for this application and saved this file in the folder images as helpdesk logo.png. So here, logo img images / helpdesk logo.png. Okay, let's reload. Okay, we have our logo now. What else? You can change the theme of the application. You can change the menu type. You can add your own custom CSS. You can create HTML templates for the results grid. You have layout hooks. These are several points in the layout where you can ask DaDaBIK to execute your own HTML, PHP, or JavaScript code. I explained more in details these aspects in another tutorial. The title is Create a CRM App in 2 hours. So I don't think it makes sense to repeat it for this video. I suggest to watch the General Graphic Customization and General Graphic Customization 2 chapters of that video. In that video, I also covered a few more aspects I don't cover here. First one is advanced form configuration. For example, the use of separators or the possibility to fine-tune the position of the fields. I don't know. I want the first 3 fields of the form in the first row. Then a separator, and then one row having just one field. That's something you can do using the form configurator. Another interesting topic I covered in that video was import from Excel and CSV. And finally, I discussed 2 optional things you can do to make your app more secure and fast: referential integrity constraints and indices. So again, if you are interested in these topics, also watch that video. Okay, let's make some chart reports now, and let's group them into a dashboard for the managers. So the first thing I will do is on pages, I will create a custom page. The custom page can be HTML, PHP, or a link page. In our case, it will be an HTML page, and we will embed here the charts I'm going to create in a minute. But first, I create the page. So add page, untitled, let's call it dashboard. It's enabled, it's an HTML page. Let's show the content, and for the moment it's just dashboard, and maybe format heading 1. Okay, and here we will have the content. So save, and we need to assign the permissions to dashboard. Well, let's say that we want to assign permission view. Yes, as you can see, the permissions for the custom pages are very different respect to the permissions we saw for tables and views. You have only one permission type, view, and you have yes, no, or yes but don't show in menu. So yes for admin and for managers. So these are the two groups that need to see this page. So if we refresh here, we have dashboard, and for the moment it's just some random text. Okay, so let's create the charts now. First one, I want to create a line chart where I can see the number of requests I've received in each week. Okay, so it's a line chart. I aggregate my data. Well, first of all, I am in the old requests table. I aggregate my data by date time, and in particular by week. So basically, for each week, I want to see how many requests I have. Generate chart, and maybe a little bit bigger. Okay, this is our chart. So in the week 0 of, as you can see, weeks here are starting from 0 of 2022, I had 4 requests. Okay, now I copy the embed code. This is the code I need to embed this chart in a page, in a custom page. So here, let's go back here, tools, source code. I need to see the HTML source code of the page, and I paste the embed code. And as you can see, I have here my chart. Next one, I want to see the number of requests assigned to each IT staff person. So assign requests, generate chart. This time I want to see a bar chart. I want to produce a bar chart, and I group my data by assigned to, and I want to see the number. Okay. So 158 to Tom and 142 to Alice. Again, show embed code, copy the code and paste it here. Sorry. Again, I have to go to source code. Okay, right. And the last one, I want to see the number of requests by group by status. So all requests, generate chart. This time it's a pie chart. Aggregate data by status and show, well, instead of count, let's use the percent. Okay, maybe again, well, maybe bigger. So unassigned 34%, assigned 30%, and solved 36%. Okay, show embed code. Source. Okay, these are our charts. Of course, here we can add some titles. So requests by week and requests by IT staff person. Well, we can say number of requests, number, and here okay, save dashboard. And here is our dashboard for managers. Well, as you can see, this is, pure HTML, so you can make the dashboard better. You can do basically whatever you want. Next topic is email alerts. The first thing we want to do is when a new request is registered in the system, we want to send an email to a manager, to Bob, who is our manager. You can do that without any coding, just by adding something to your configuration file. So, well, first of all, you have to enable insert notice email sending. So you just set this parameter to 1. And then you have another parameter containing the recipients of the message. In this case, we want to send it just to bob@bob.com. In case you have more, you will add 1, and then Alice, and then 2, 3, 4. Okay. You can also add CC and BCC recipients, but this is exactly what we need. So let's say if it works. So I don't remember, the employees are Monica and Walter. So let me log in as Walter. And then let's add a request. This shouldn't be here. So for employees, the permission for the insert form should be no. Maybe we forgot to set this permission. Anyway, I'll leave it empty and save. Okay, item correctly inserted. Let's look into MailHog, and as you can see, Bob has just received an email with the details of the item just inserted. Next part is more complicated. This time we want to send an email when a new comment is registered. So not a new request, but a new comment. If you remember, for each request we can have comments. Well, we don't have comments here in these two requests, but we can have them. But this time the email doesn't need to be sent to a generic recipient that is always the same, but to the recipient involved in the conversation. So if the employee who started the request writes a comment, then the person of the staff the request is assigned to needs to be notified with an email. On the other side, if the person of the staff writes a comment, then the employee needs to be notified. Okay? To do that, we have to write a few lines of code. But it's so simple that I can hardly call this coding. Okay, let me show you the code we need, and I will discuss it with you. So this is the code we need, and we need to add this code to the operational hooks file. Why? Because this is an operational hook. What is an operational hook? Well, basically, with the operational hooks, you can add some custom code. You can ask DaDaBIK to execute some custom code when something happens. So you have many events in a DaDaBIK application that can trigger the execution of a custom function. For example, here we are defining our hook saying execute this function. I know it's a long name, but I prefer to use long names because finally they are easier to understand especially when you read your code after a few days or weeks or months. So here we are saying execute this function, and the code related to this function is here when after any insert in the table request comments. Okay, so this is the syntax we use to say add a hook for the table request comments after the insertion of a new comment, and execute this function. You can use the name you want for the function. The important thing is that it needs to start with DaDaBIK _ by default. And this is our function. The function related to an after insert hook receives as parameter the value of the DaDaBIK unique field, which typically is the primary key, of the record just inserted. So this $ID contains the value of the ID of the comment just inserted. Remember that this field needs to be an auto increment field in our case, but it was, so it's fine. So what are we doing here? Since we have the ID of the comment, we want to know something about the related request. Okay, so we use this DaDaBIK API get record details that allows us, without executing SQL code directly, to get the details of a record just by using the name of the table, the name of the DaDaBIK unique field, again typically the primary key, and its value. So with this command we get a so-called array containing the values for each field of the comment. Okay, so comment info's ID request, for example, contains the ID request of that comment. So the request the comment is linked to. Comment info's attachment will contain the name of the attachment, and so on and so forth. So using the ID request, we want to get the details of the related requests. So again, we use get record details, this time with table requests, field ID, but that's the ID of the request, and the value. And now we use an if statement to say if the ID staff assigned of the request is not null, and if it is not null, it means that the request is assigned to someone, then we send an email alert using the PHP built-in mail function, but you can use anything you prefer to send emails from PHP, and we send an email. If you know some PHP, and in particular the syntax of the mail function, you probably know that the first parameter is the recipient, the second one is the subject, and the third one is the body of the email. So here, using again get record details, we got the staff member info using DaDaBIK users table, ID user field, and ID staff assigned as value. Why we did that? Because we need to know the email of the staff member. That will be in staff member info email user. So this is our recipient, new comment for request, and then the request title, and finally the comment as body. Okay, so with this code we send an email to the staff member, and with this code to the staff member that is assigned to this request. With these two lines of code instead, we send an email to the employee. So first, again using get record details, we get the information about the employee related to this request, that is request info employee. Maybe I've noticed that this time I've used username user instead of ID user. Why? Because the username of the user, of the employee, is something that I already have in my request. And why can I use it instead of the ID of the user? Because even username user is a unique field. So when I use get record details, the important rule to follow is that this field must be unique. I'm sure we don't have two users having the same username. So now we have the email of the user, and we can send another similar email to the employee. It's a bit different respect to what I explained you before, because before I said when the employee adds a comment, we send an email to the staff member. And when the staff member adds a comment, we send an email to the employee. Actually, we always send an email to both the staff member involved and the employee involved, okay? But anyway, it doesn't change much. So let's try if it works. Okay, maybe we can take a request that is already assigned, this one. Employee Walter assigned to Alice. Let's just make an example here. And I am Walter now. I create a new item here. Here is my comment and save. Okay, the comment has been saved. Both Walter and Alice should have received an email. Let's see. Correct. So here is my comment, new comment for request I can print to Alice and to Alice and to Walter. Okay. There is an additional email here to Bob because of what we set in our configuration file, every insert operations will trigger an email to Bob, the manager. Okay, our application is now ready. You can test if you want the entire workflow. For example, you can log in as Walter and enter a request. An email for that request related to that request will be sent to the manager. So the manager can assign the request to someone from the staff. That staff member will see the request assigned, and so he or she can start working on the request, or they can send a comment, add a comment to the request to ask some details to the employee, in this case Walter. And as we just saw, some email alerts will be sent to both Walter and the staff member involved in the request when a new comment is added. The staff member and the manager can also change the priority of the request, and at some point the staff member will probably set the status as solved. Okay, and that's the end of the business process. Okay, let me discuss some future work now. So some possible improvements. A very simple thing I forgot to add is, well, 2 additional fields in the request table containing a date and time when the request has been assigned to someone and when the request has been solved. This could be useful because we can do some statistics about how long it takes typically to solve requests. Next improvement, an algorithm that automatically assigns requests to staff members according to the number of assigned and unsolved requests they have. So of course, if a staff member in that moment is very busy, we don't want to assign yet another request. Next one, we can improve the chart reports. In particular, I'm thinking about the second chart, the one where we show the number of requests by assigned to each staff member. Maybe we could add some filters there allowing the managers to filter by solved or not solved, and also a time filter. So something like, okay, show me this chart, but only for the requests created in the last 2 months, something like that. The last improvement I'm thinking about is related is for managing the fact that maybe some employees can create too many requests. So we can introduce a sort of trigger when a user creates more than n requests in a month, for example. We can send an email to the manager. So the manager can see what is happening, if the requests are fine, or if for some reason that employee is kind of abusing the service. All these improvements require some code, and some of these improvements, and maybe something else that will come to my mind, will be discussed and implemented in the second part of this video that will be available at some point. My approach is I divide each tutorial into episodes. The first one is no code, the second one is low code. This is the third tutorials of this series. These 3 tutorials are related to 3 different applications: CRM, inventory system, and Helpdesk Application. Only the no-code part. Then I will do the second part, the low-code part, of each of the 3 tutorials. Guys, as usual, a quick recap. We created a complete and custom Helpdesk application, starting from scratch in about 1 hour and a half, using a low-code, no-code platform, DaDaBIK. For any questions, you can write a comment here or send a message through the contact form we have on DaDaBIK.com. How can you get DaDaBIK? Very easy. Visit DaDaBIK.com/download to get your license. So that's it for today. See you next time. Ciao!